All right, so welcome everyone. Today, Seth and I have a chance to sit down and talk about what it takes to make it to the CrossFit Games. So this is kind of a topic that I've wanted to talk with you specifically about for a while. But before we go into that, let's just kind of, I guess, do a brief introduction about who you are, your background with CrossFit, and kind of, what you've been doing lately. So,
I'll do it only if you'll give your background too after.
okay.
Okay, deal. So background started in 2008. Found it through actually going through the police academy. I was like a personal trainer before that, and then found CrossFit through law enforcement. Immediately opened a gym basically in 2009. I knew this was the way right away, and I became super obsessed with the sports side of stuff right out of the gate. And then basically from there, I just would early 2010s work with any athlete who kind of asked me for help and wanted to take their game to the next level. Developed, Misfit Athletics back in the day, and now have jump ship training, which is more so geared towards athletes that aren't necessarily trying to pursue CrossFit as their full-time career as the CrossFit Games athlete, but more so trying to balance out the urge to be a competitive athlete, but still live a normal, busy, structured life. And so that's sort of what I'm doing now. So I have a couple athletes that are kind of fringe level that I'm working with, just barely two that bubbled out for making the games this year, just on the edge. A couple masters athletes that are right on the fringe, one that qualified for the games. And so just finding that balance of how to help people ride the line of taking their fitness to an elite level while keeping their real world responsibilities intact.
Yeah, that's super cool. And we can talk more about, I guess, how you go about towing that line and whether it's necessary or not to make it to the CrossFit Games. But me, I've been in CrossFit since 2009 ish, training, coaching since like 2010, and then I own a CrossFit affiliate in Northern Virginia, and we're going on 10 years now. So almost 10 years as an affiliate owner.
That's awesome.
And then I've been doing some online content and helping people online, doing coaching online for the past 3-ish years. Kind of started with stuff on YouTube. And then my computer and my camera couldn't really keep up with what I was trying to do. So started making content on Instagram and started working with you now, and found Jump Ship and reconnected with you after all those years. So that was super cool, and here we are.
Well, you're certainly a legitimate content creator in the space now. I don't think anyone can argue that. So pretty cool.
Thanks. And yeah, I'm like, I guess I never really like set out to be a content creator, which is probably why it feels pretty natural for me and why it's easy for me to do it. I talk to a lot of people where they're like, man, I'm going to start doing what you're doing, or I'd love to do what you do. I'm like, yeah, like you just got to do it. But I think I love it. It's the same thing with training. Like you can't force people to train. If they love it, they'll do anything. So
What's funny is like the short form content that you're currently crushing. I hate doing it, but I do have to do it because it's part of what keeps my brand and business alive, and I have to do it. I'm not as natural with it as you tend to be. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm trying to learn from you along the way.
yeah. So let's talk. I guess so. A lot of people want to make it to the CrossFit Games, obviously,
Yeah.
and I find it interesting in your like introduction that you said you're like, yeah, I kind of latched onto the sports side of things right away, but you've never. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've never been latched onto the sports side of things from a personal competitive standpoint. Am I right?
That's dead on. I always liked challenging exercise. I always like pushing myself, but I've never been a athlete of any kind that you would speak of. I can do lots of movements. I can challenge myself, but yeah, I've never taken competition to a serious level within the sport of CrossFit. So yeah, it's more so like I became obsessed with the idea of the sport, and then like anyone who was willing and able to push themselves um, towards that goal, I wanted to be a part of helping them because I was never going to do it myself. So my side was like, all right, like let me be your second pair of eyes and ears and guide you, sort of thing.
I think a lot of people don't have that, I guess, that clarity or that ability to look at themselves and say, hey, you know what, like, as much as it sounds cool to be a CrossFit Games athlete, like, reality is not all of us can do that. And
Not many
some
of
of us are
us can
better
do this.
coaches.
Yeah, not
Right.
many of us can actually do that.
So I guess my main kind of question with this whole topic today is really like, is the sport at a point now in 2023 where you have to basically be like a genetic freak or have started really, really young or take drugs or something to get to the CrossFit Games? Or is it possible that, you can find CrossFit now and train your ass off, and in 5 years, you can make it to the games with the right set of things, programming, coaching, and we'll talk about all that. Like
Yep.
in general, what
I
do you
think
think?
it's the latter. I think we're still very early in this. If we look at where we started looking at the games around 2010, 11, 12, when we started like having those idealistic dreams of getting there or working with someone who gets there, it was more so like find someone dedicated enough that could put in the time and get to that level, and it was feasible. Now it's more challenging. You do have to have some athletic background more than likely, or some some sport background that allows you to progress faster, adapt faster to CrossFit. But I think that it's been shown that someone can hop in now in 2, 3, 4 years of committing themselves to it in the right circumstances, like you said, can still get to the games. I think about things in terms of like if we're looking at CrossFit as a sport versus other established professional sports, like if you want to get to the NBA, let's say, you have to start as a kid, be in all the right programs, go to the
Be six
private
five.
schools, be 6'5", go to private schools, be a standout there, be get a scholarship to college, and still you could be a D1 college standout and you're still not getting drafted. In CrossFit,
Right.
we're nowhere near that we consider the athlete pool to be saturated now, but just compared to where it was 5 or 10 years ago, but it's nowhere near saturated. And you look at the level of talent in other sports. I think an example that pops out is Jason Hopper. He was like I think he was like a maybe Clemson wide receiver or a
Yeah.
college wide receiver in football, something like that. He didn't get to the NFL. Not many people do, but he's certainly not the best athlete, even in his locker room. You know what I mean? Never mind across every
Right.
sport. So what would happen if the real best athletes in the world started coming in and competing in CrossFit? Then I think your first point would be the case. No one's getting there unless you're genetically gifted enough and have the right circumstances. But we're not, the pool's not that saturated yet with the best of the best. So we can still find people who are pretty darn good that can dedicate themselves and get there. I think that's the answer I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like my wife in the last few years has really like latched onto CrossFit, like drank the Kool-Aid really hard. And, she trains, she does all the programming that China gives her and more. And like once, does everything she can outside the gym. And like the words I never want to speak is like genetic potential. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I never expected when I met her for her to do what she's doing now. So I'm like,
Right.
and like in her mind, she's not a very large athlete, but she's like, oh, well, these girls are clean and jerking 245 at the games. Like, that's what I have to do. Not looking at like her body weight and like what's realistic. So, like, as her husband and like, as a coach for other people, like, when is that reality talk and that genetic potential talk where it's like, hey, like, I know this is something you want and we can work as hard as we can towards it, but like, where is the harsh reality talk, or is there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I don't think you actually really ever have to have that talk typically. I think it's more like, hey, yeah, that's a great long-term goal, but you have to set about 500 short-term goals to get to your long-term goal. So like there's no point in focusing on getting to the CrossFit Games. You just said what those girls have to do to get there, right? So let's work on your clean and jerk. Let's work on your muscle ups. Let's work on this. And then so one of the things could be, okay, we're working on all these micro goals, and then the larger goal for this year is you're going to go compete at the fittest experience in Texas, or you're going to go do Wadapalooza, or you're going to go do whatever these comps are. And we're going to see what level you qualify for. You're going to go compete wherever you qualify. And then we're going to kind of start over again the next year and keep improving. So I think just taking that incremental step approach with athletes doesn't have to squash their dreams, so to speak. And like I've been mistaken before with athletes. Like regionals back in the day used to be really hard to get to. People just wanted to get to regionals. You remember those days, like
Right.
probably pretty
Mm-hmm.
well. And I would work with athletes in my local gym that I'd be like, oh, I mean, this person's not getting in regionals. Like you miss one rep, you don't get in. Like Northeast regionals is
Right.
impossible. You're not getting in. And then more than once, I've been surprised by somebody who committed themselves 2-3 years to the process and got to regionals. And I was like, wow, I
Hmm.
wish I never told this person it was unrealistic, because clearly I was way off of that. So I kind of have learned my lesson about shooting down people's like massive dreams, even if in my head I'm like, you're nuts. It's just
Hmm.
like, okay, cool. Let's start with this, because I know you have to be able to do this to get there. So let's start here first and see if we can accomplish that. And that will take us closer to your goal. And that can stay their goal if they want. And then my job as a coach is to just set them in the right direction. That's how I think about it now.
For sure. How much do you think that like the lifestyle stuff plays into your ability to make the games? Because I think that like a lot of people that I talk to that have high aspirations of, taking their game to the next level, like a lot of it is like it's not that you don't want to or you're not going to work hard enough or we don't have the perfect program or the right coaching for you. It's like your job is you work as a construction worker and you're working all day, or like you're working overnight as a shift nurse, like how much do you think that, I guess,
Yeah.
I've had when I've talked to people where they're like, hey, I'm going to take the next year off, I'm going to quit my job and train for the CrossFit Games. Like, how much is that lifestyle piece what's holding you back versus other stuff?
Yeah. I think it's obvious, right? I feel like if you're not dedicating yourself to a craft that you're trying to be elite to, like if that's not able to be your top priority, then it won't be. And
Mhm.
it's going to suffer. There's just so few people who could probably juggle a lot of things and still do that. Even like even some of the best, like the Fronings, the Frasers, the Tia Claires of the world, like all of them, they didn't really have any sort of business going while they were training at the highest level, right? You look at all their how much success they have with their programs and their media and all the stuff they do now. None of that was happening while they were training at a high level, because it's not possible to put that kind of work in. So someone with a 9 to 5, unless it's real cushy and your whole job supports you and allows you to, go out on lunch and get your 40 minutes of cardio in or whatever, like
Right.
I don't see it. And like, I guess one of my examples, I guess, from this year would be Chloe Wilson. Like 3 times now, she's been a bubble athlete getting to the games. And with the exception of when she did it at age 18, the last 3 years now, actually in a row, she's been a full-time firefighter. She's like an acting
Yeah.
captain at the fire department. She's like an administrative, like she's busy lady. She's young still, but she's like full-time job, working weird hours, dealing with stuff nobody wants to deal with. You respond to accident scenes and fires, like no one wants to see that
Yeah.
stuff, and you carry it. And then you're supposed to go put this massive amount of effort into yourself in the gym. I just don't think most people have the capacity there for that sort of stuff. It just becomes like I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you've
I mean, I think that the lifestyle part is like 70% of it. But for me, it's more, when I've dealt with athletes and coaching people, it's how do you get people to recognize that like you're putting in all the effort in the gym, but like, you're not doing what needs to happen outside the gym to solidify the effort that you did put in the gym. Um,
Is that
I
recovery,
think
you
it's really,
think? Is that recovery or is that
yeah.
effort in the gym?
No, 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 no. I mean, like, I think that people can't out. I mean, everyone is putting out a lot of effort. Everyone's trying really, really hard. I think the biggest difference I feel like is in the recovery piece, and a lot of that is the lifestyle and the job and the kids, and
Right.
like we talked to Greg, who's in our little chat group, and like he has a baby, and all of a sudden it's like gets really sick, training gets all screwed up, like, stuff starts to, hurt because you can't get your 8 hours of sleep. You got a baby crying. So like real life happens. Um, but I think that not enough people look at that when they are trying to set their goals for the CrossFit Games. They're like,
Right.
who's going to be my coach? Who's going to be my program? Who am I going to get to do my nutrition? And they're like, yeah, I'm just going to sleep wherever or whatever. But
I'll make it happen no matter what. You don't know me. I'll make
yeah,
it happen. It's like,
yeah,
it's not you,
yeah. You
man.
can't
It's the
grind it out to the
circumstances.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think that's a major factor. But you know what's funny is that's one of those things that I just feel like is so obvious. I always find it funny when I have to have that conversation with somebody. I'm like, what do we like? I can't believe it. Like I have athletes who have, they're the type that maybe have like an injury every 3 or 4 weeks, or not an injury, but like something nagging them, or
Something's
this is
bugging them.
bothering
Yeah.
them, or bad performances like for several days in a row. And they're asking like, oh, let's look at more videos of my workouts. Look at this. And I'm like, we're not looking at the right stuff here. Like this is not what we're talking about here. Like let's talk about your sleep. Are you, oh, I sleep for 8, 9 hours a night. I'm like, are you in bed scrolling TikTok for the first 3 hours and then going to bed? Or are you actually going to bed? Like, are you waking up three times a night to go pee and now your sleep's disrupted over and over again? Like, what's your nutrition look like? And the fact that we have those conversations with people and it's like they didn't consider that first is like, wow, okay.
To me, that's coaching. That's like the big part
Yeah.
of coaching, and like I love jump ship and what you do because I have so much respect for the programming side of things. Because that's the side that I feel like I don't quite love as much, but I love the coaching side. Um, okay, so this is something that I see at the games. I am the like movement efficiency, guy
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram
Yep.
on the technique stuff. And I see people that are at the highest level in the sport that move like garbage, and that like you look at them and it's like, how important really is technique, And I see people that are way stronger than me that can do things where I'm like, I can never move a barbell like that just because I'm not raw strong enough, even if I was technically perfect. So I think where does, I guess, from a skill and technique standpoint, like how much do you have to do of that, and how much is like it's not worth it to spend the time to fix your snatch because we have so many other things that we need to work on in CrossFit.
Yeah, I think that people are I think they're starting to realize that well, I should say higher level athletes, starting to realize that you need to do some sort of movement efficiency work probably every session leading into that piece. That's one of the things I try to tell people is like, for the jump ship 90, for example, it's usually 3 pieces and there's 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes between pieces. And that rest is intentional because let's say you did whatever, you have a muscle up Metcon coming, right? And now I gave you 18 minutes between your lift and your finisher that has that muscle up in there. I expect you in that 18 minutes to be trying to clean up your muscle ups a little bit, hit some practice sets, make sure that the timing of kipping that dip is where it needs to be, make sure your turnover is feeling sharp and everything's feeling tight. If something doesn't feel right, you make an adjustment. Maybe you're filming a couple sets there, maybe you're reviewing after. But the point is, if you're only focused on your score or your reps or whatever by the end and you're not focused on how you got there, then you're missing a whole component of training. So looking at guys like, again, we just use these three, Rich, Matt, Tia, we would have a tough time critiquing much of anything that they do at the CrossFit Games. And if they did make a mistake, it was almost always fixed the next year with movement. So that just goes to show you, that's not an accident. Those that move deliberately and continue to fix that stuff become more efficient. And I think we use the term like being efficient we way overuse it in CrossFit without even defining it. Efficiency is
I agree.
basically doing more work with less effort. And people don't think of it that way. They think of it as like, oh, I look prettier when I do it. I'll post it to Instagram because it looks better. No, you're able to do more work with less effort because of the way you're moving. And so it uses less energy. And no one even thinks about what efficiency actually means. So wouldn't we all want that exact thing in our sport?
Yeah. I mean, I always think it's funny too. Like, it almost says when I'm typing out captions about something that has to do with being efficient, I'm like, this makes it easier to do this. And then I like erase it because people are going to comment and say, oh, why would I want to make it easier? It's like
Right.
different goals with fitness here.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I still, you know, I think movement breaks down when you're racing at a high level, sure. But
Yeah.
I also see a lot of athletes where it's like you're just leaving so much on the table from an efficiency standpoint. Um, and I look at myself and I'm like, man, if I moved like that, there's no way I'd be able to get there. So,
Right. Yeah,
um,
when you make each rep harder, or or each rep consumes more energy, and then that breaks you down further, it just sends you spiraling down, and that's why you see so many athletes break down at the third way through the workout, halfway through the workout, 2/3, wherever their breakdown point is. That's when the movement changes, and that's when things get worse because it's all
right.
about how well you move. I just don't. It's funny because other than us talking about it now, when's the last time you heard anybody talk about what that actually means within the sport of it? There's, oh, move better, be more efficient. Like, no one even
Right.
talks about what that means.
And I think people stop practicing movements when they stop being in their affiliate class and they stop having a coach that's literally like, okay, we're going to go through 10 really perfect reps. Show me a perfect rep. If someone's standing in front of you telling that, you're going to do something way different than if it's like, oh, it's just on my Train Heroic app today. Like,
Right.
hit
And
five
and
perfect reps. Like, how good are those? So,
and you made a point too, like you're like, why would I want to make something easier? Like for people who are thinking about it in terms of exercise, right? Challenging themselves. But like and then tying that into a coach telling you to do 10 perfect reps. If I was going to do 10 perfect wall balls, let's say, with my feet in a perfect position, and whatever that looks like for me, for my mechanics, I might do wall balls one way to be perfect, and then another way, if I'm trying to do slightly faster sets, I might get under the ball a little faster. I might try to beat it in the bottom of a
yep,
squat. I might try to shorten or bounce more aggressively in my squat or something like that to be faster. And like there's all different components to think
100%.
about when it comes to this stuff, and it's very very complex, and I think very few understand it. For especially on the athlete side of it, we understand it as coaches. The athletes don't understand it. They learn a wall ball, and that's how they do a wall ball. But there's more to it than that.
Yep. And one thing I tell a lot of people is that all of these movements exist in patterns. And so like if you are screwing up the pattern of the squat in one thing, or if you're not paying as much attention to it in the wall ball shot, your snatch may not develop as well because of that pattern you've reinforced for 150 reps in a really shitty way, and then
Right.
that's the way that your body knows it. So
Yeah, especially
um
with this. That's a great point. Especially with the squat, right? It's really hard to develop multiple squatting patterns. You have kind of one movement that you kind of do, and so you want that squat to be able to work for your wall ball. You want to be able to work to catch a snatch. You want to be able to work under a clean. You want to work for air squats. Like you have to do, yeah, and then you
yep.
have to be able to
And
do variations, but as needed. But you need to know them. You need to know when you're going to use a variation.
yep. And I think that like when I first started CrossFit, I had a very hip dominant, like wide stance, like shoot the hips back, and just a very hip dominant squat. Um, and I think when I got hurt, like rebuilding that, I've had to kind of like change a lot of the way that I feel about my movement pattern, and that takes some slow reps and some time of not just crushing yourself and working as hard as you can in a metcon to make sure that practice actually happens.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, that kind of leads us right into programming, though, which I think is interesting when people talk about programming to go to the CrossFit Games. I know we've had a couple discussions about different programming camps and how the public, I guess, is like the optics on programming and making it to the CrossFit Games, because CrossFit is a training methodology and there's these competing camps that are all have a variation on a similar training methodology saying, hey, mine's the best to get you to the pinnacle of the sport.
Yeah.
And then you have some that have more money than others, or some that have specific ties and connections. And I think it gets a little muddy from an athlete standpoint where it's like, what do I do? Who's the best? Why do I? Is proven actually proven? Is, hard work pays off the way? And is any of those actually CrossFit?
I mean, that's the first question, right? How do you define which programs are actually still CrossFit and which have become so structured that they're a strength and conditioning program that then tie more CrossFit specific stuff at certain points of the year together. But yeah, I think anyone who has a program that has any level of success is going to know the basics of putting together a Metcon. They're going to know the basics of how to balance out monostructural conditioning with your weightlifting, with your gymnastics, and then how to attack, how to strategize. Because it's not just getting fit, but it's actually how to approach certain training pieces, whether you're testing training, whatever the intent is, whatever the stimulus is, whatever you want to adapt to, right? So it's not even just the workouts, but it's how you attack the workouts. And so all these different camps, they all have something working for them. Everyone there has some experience. Most, I will say, are not like, again, we use these three. We'll keep using them. The Matt, the Rich, the Tia, right? So they have Mayhem, Hard Work Pays Off, and Proven. I don't even know who's writing those programs anymore. So Rich isn't writing Mayhem. Matt probably started writing Hard Work Pays Off, but then when he realized how much work goes into running a company like that, I know for a fact these are the people working for him writing his programs now because I know them. And Proven, started with Tia's husband. I'm sure he's not the one writing all these programs anymore. Most people have no idea how much work goes into this, how much time is spent. When I get off this with you today, I have to do my remote clients, and then I have to spend hours over the next 2 days just getting through 2 weeks of August coming up for Jump Ship. It takes forever to put this stuff together in a meaningful way. And so, yeah, I think any of these programs will work if someone was dedicated enough and goes back to the lifestyle factors you talked about, nutrition, sleeping, all that stuff. If you train yourself consistently and you push yourself and you're somewhat balanced, you are going to make progress, right? So it's hard to find what those separators would be to know who's better or who's not. And I think who's better just depends on what you're able to do, what you believe in, how well you're able to recover, what your goals are, all that stuff. So to me, there's room for 1,000 programs because there's just so many different variables that each athlete faces. It's just a matter of how you would ever navigate to find out which one is actually best for you, right? I don't even know how you'd begin that.
Right. And I don't think that I don't think anyone is doing a good job of, I've seen people do program reviews of different things, but even after, I've been following Jump Ship now for almost a year pretty consistently. And even the latest change that we made after the open to doing or most of the strength post Metcon, I've seen it takes a month or two of training on that program consistently to really feel how all of these things play into each other and how they are, one thing after another. And I'll see people I'm like, oh, they're doing a Jump Ship piece today, and then they're not doing it 3 weeks later. So it's how are you going to get an accurate representation of what a program is if you're just here and there
bouncing? Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that they're all, from a quality of programming standpoint, I think that they're all going to kind of get you there or do what they need to do. But what I guess, some of them are more on the strength and conditioning end, like you said, and some are more on the true CrossFit end. If you have an athlete that has a severe weakness, is there an appropriate time, and how do you know when they should stop doing CrossFit, as we would say, and bias their training completely for a set amount of time? So Haley Adams taking a year and doing strength, or I don't do any endurance stuff. And so I'm hey, maybe if I I don't need really to do strength. If I just did like, maybe if I bias my training towards doing more endurance stuff, that would bring up my overall level of fitness, and then I can bring CrossFit back in closer to the open when it's more sport specific. Do you think that is important to do, or do you think that sticking with CrossFit and just training a CrossFit program, how Jump Ship is, which I love, is the right way?
Um, Boy, that's a challenging question. So if we're talking individuals, which it sounds like we're talking about an individual who has a severe weakness,
Right.
I think there's all kinds of room to take drastic measures in someone's program. You could completely take, the traditional Metcon away from them, and you could have them doing like, endurance work, running, rowing, skiing, biking, intervals, and long, slow work or whatever to get that system built, and then come back around and pick up kind of where you left off elsewhere. You probably won't lose much, even if you sacrifice, let's say, because you were doing a lot less of it, 5 to 10% of your overall strength, and maybe your skills are suffering a little bit because you're not doing them as much. You can usually redevelop what you had pretty quick, right? It's not because you kind of build a ceiling, and to me it seems like if you fall below that ceiling, it's easier to get back to where your ceiling was than it is.
To push it higher.
Yeah, exactly, to push it higher.
For
And
sure.
so I feel like you don't lose that much. You might feel like you do, but you can get it back quick. So on a case by case basis, I think it's totally appropriate to send someone off on a strength bias, endurance bias, even skill bias with skill strength work. Like if gymnastics is the case, a lot of a lot of time it takes and rest between sets and stuff to build up, let's say, pressing strength. Like for you, for example, if you really want to tackle the strict handstand push-up, like you could go through a whole program of that, and then you would probably end up cutting your normal training by half almost with the amount of other stuff you'd be doing and time it would take to do that. But it's totally appropriate. It depends where you want to be. If you're looking at competing, again, CrossFit Games level, I think those people who are training full time, essentially 2.5 to 5 hours a day, I think it's really easy to bias their program and have them still do a little bit of everything and hit their weaknesses. I think that's much easier. It's much harder when someone wants to do that and they have 60 to 90 minutes to train, because you're essentially taking away the rest of the components from them and making them do one thing. You know what I mean? So the less you can train, the
Mm-hmm.
harder it is to bias it, because you're going to miss out. The more you can train, the more you can bias, because there's more space and room and time to make sure you're still getting those other things in, at least at some level of some dose.
Yeah, I mean
So
that makes sense. I guess, and I'm a big, the amount of volume that the Jump Ship 90 is to me, and I mean I have two kids and I have a business and other stuff going on. To me, it's plenty. I don't I never feel like I'm like, oh man, let me hit this competitor extra one. I never
yeah,
feel like that. Um, so and I talk to people where they're like, they have these, like you said, training for 3 5 hours a day. Like, how many of those people that are doing that are actually getting what they should from the program? Or like, like, do you need to do that volume? I know you're going to sell, hey, I need to do 90 minutes of volume because it's the Jump Ship 90.
well, let me ask you this: how many people do you know that are that survive that for any length of time? You must have met dozens, if
None,
not a
but I see it
hundred
on the
people.
internet.
Yeah, of course, you see it on the internet, but no one can survive that. People do it because they're so misled from the media of these bigger companies that you just spoke about with what it takes. They get fired up from that 30-second well-produced Instagram clip. They sign up and they do it for 6 weeks, and they beat the hell out of themselves for 6 weeks. And then they end up with either, my elbow's hurting, my
Injuries.
knee's hurting,
Yeah.
I'm tired. Oh, I'm frustrated because they keep programming handstand push-ups. I don't have handstand push-ups. They keep, the RX weights are too heavy. Like, nobody takes the hint when it's right in front of them. They just, you know what I mean? They just feel like, I have to do this to get better. The answers are right literally in front of you every day when your training session doesn't go well. But yeah, no one is surviving that stuff. That used to be I feel like people are coming around to training less now. I feel like it, but there's some people who are just misinformed. I don't know. This is all we can do to reach them, right? Hopefully someone watches the show and watches your social media, and I don't know, man. It's so crazy. Like, I like working out. I'm usually
Mm.
a one and done guy or a one and maybe a lift guy. And I'm like, damn, that was plenty. That's great. I feel great. I can go eat dinner, whatever I want tonight. I feel
Yep.
fantastic. I worked hard. And then people who do the 90 that I, at my gyms or I train, I'm like, man, you worked hard. That 90-minute session was freaking brutal. I know it was brutal. I wrote it. I see the scores coming in. Like, you worked really hard. I can't even imagine. And then I have a couple who I give, 2, 3 extra pieces a week, not extra sessions, 2, 3 extra pieces a week to. And I'm like, wow, how are you doing? Like, are you holding up okay? This is a lot of work. And
Yeah.
so, like, I can't even have a conversation with someone who's spending 5 hours in the gym anymore. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
are you alive? Are you okay? Like, do you have mental
Yeah.
issues? Like, what's going on? Like, how are you
Right.
able to do this and think it's okay? So, yeah, that's how I feel.
More power to them.
I guess, but
Um,
I feel bad though. It's so much effort, and they want it so bad. It's such an unproductive way of doing things. I feel so bad, and yeah, I had to have some hard talks
so
with you. I'm sure you have too.
for sure. And like going back to the endurance thing, that is part of my main issue with I want to do some endurance training, but I feel like it is such a waste of time. Like, and I recognize that
Yeah,
it's going to take long, slow, steady effort to build an endurance base, but I'm just like, dude, this is so boring. Like,
it's a
I'm
lot
in,
of time.
yeah, I'm like, I'm going to spend 3 hours running.
Right.
Don't
Yeah.
running slow, not running like I'm trying hard. Like I'm trying hard to run slow. It's a weird.
Yeah, you're gonna send me off on a tangent right now too, because like
Uh-huh.
everyone likes to talk about zone two work in CrossFit. I don't know of a
Hmm.
single CrossFitter that's ever done zone two work. They don't even know how to do zone two work because they can't stay in a
Interesting.
conversational pace. They can't help it. They live in zone three and zone four, and they spend 40 minutes in zone three or zone four just crushing their CNS for their during their rest day for their next training day. Because like I had to get my zone
Yep.
two work in. I'm like, my God, you're not even doing zone two work. You're not even listening. So
That's
yeah,
funny. Um, cool. So, a lot of people, going back to, I guess, making it to the CrossFit Games and starting from like the very beginning, how long, and we probably should have touched on this a little bit earlier, but how long do you think that someone should stay in their affiliate class? And then, like, because we have people where, they've been a member of the gym for 6 months. They pick up some movements pretty quickly. They like the sports side of it, and they're like, I need to follow a competitor program and do my own thing. And like for me, I'm like, hey, the jump ship class that I'm programming is literally the same thing as the competitor version that I'm doing.
right.
It's still a competitor program. You're just not quite ready for it. And like, like how long do you think that people should stay in an affiliate class? And then when is the time for them to move on to doing some type of competitive programming? And then when is the time for them to move on to getting their own coach and getting something remote and a little bit more customized for themselves?
So I'll go with the coach one first. The coach one can be anytime because the coach one doesn't necessarily have to be competitive. It may just mean that you need a little more accountability from somebody who is personally looking over you. Not that you can't get something like that at an affiliate, but somebody who you can just text when stuff's not going right, or you need a question answered, or send a message or whatever. You know what I mean? So you just want that person that's in your corner. I think coaching in that sense can go a long way. It doesn't have anything to do with going to the CrossFit Games. I have athletes of all
Right.
levels, and they just need that reassurance that the decisions they're making are good or bad, and want someone to keep them on track. So I think you can get a coach at any level, anytime. Even if you just started CrossFit and you're like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a little weird if you don't know what you're doing with anything quite yet to get a coach, but like, you should be relying on your gym, hopefully. So back to the gym, when do you kind of leave affiliate class? I don't think you necessarily ever have to leave affiliate class. I think you could take class and make that a part of your training and get to semifinals if you were that dedicated. Now, I'm not saying you don't do something above and beyond affiliate class after. You might be exposing yourself to some extra pieces, 2, 3 times, 4 times a week, you're doing extra stuff. Maybe if you happen to use jump ship class programming, maybe in class you're using the jump ship 90 weights or skills, but you're doing it with class. I'm a big proponent of just having some competitors do some class stuff because it paces it out forces them to work on efficiency, like we talked about earlier, because then you have somebody who's putting eyes on you. And if you always work out by yourself, you're not really getting that. Um,
Yeah.
so, but as far as like having to commit to the 90 all the way, yeah, if you train alone, like in your garage, and you know enough, and you're not going to a gym, you're not taking affiliate classes, like you can make the 90 or 60 or whatever work for you. If you're willing to scale back, that's another good time to get a coach if you're working out solo. But I don't think you ever have to graduate from affiliate class. I don't think that needs to be a thing that people have to be done with at any point. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I mean, and I see people where, I mean, more often than not, it's, hey, you should probably spend some more time in the affiliate class.
Yeah.
And I, of course, can't, I know you run an excellent gym. I like to think that I have, great coaches here and everything. Like, and I do recognize after being in this for 10 years that not all CrossFit gyms are created equal. And,
Right.
people have a varying degree of what's going on, especially, doing coaching with people all over the world in the last 6 months to a year with the online stuff that I've been doing. There is a wide variety of stuff out there that people are doing and that they want to do.
Yes.
So I think meeting people where they're at is really important, but there's only so much that I can do technique wise remote. And I have had people where it's
Right.
like, hey, we're going to learn how to snatch, clean, and jerk over video review from remote coaching. And it works. I've done it. But I think that staying in the affiliate class for at least a year or two is really important because they miss out on like the CrossFit for health side of things. I feel like if you jump into the sport part of it too soon, and then if you get injured as a CrossFit athlete, if you don't have the health side of it to fall back onto, you can kind of really start to hate CrossFit,
Yep.
in my opinion, and from my experience with injury. So I think, going through injury and coming back out of it, now I have a much more of a respect for the health side of CrossFit and how important it is to just be healthy and move and train, mentally and physically. But after, once you have all the skills and you have, you're hitting the workouts RX, you can do everything, then I think it's perfectly fine for you to kind of branch out onto your own and start to push yourself a little bit on
I
a competitive
I
program.
agree. I agree. I think that's fine. But I think I would be surprised I don't know anyone that within even 18 months was doing, even with a background in some sort of strength and conditioning. I don't know anyone 18 months that was coming in my gyms and doing everything RX. And even if they were trying to do it RX, they weren't doing it well. So like
Right.
that's the one thing. And I think you'd agree with this. Like at my gyms, the competitors usually take class at least some of the time. And just off the top of my head, I can think of like the other day we had split jerks in the program, and the amount of people I would go around, they're still jerking some of the guys 275 to 300 plus pounds, which is like a really decent jerk, but
Yeah.
watching their footwork, I'm like, who taught you that? Like, where did you learn? Like, let's take the weight off. Like, where you're not doing that
Right.
anymore. Like, you're going to be, your ceiling is where you're at unless we fix this. So like,
For sure.
they would never get that on their own. If they were just following it on their own in the corner, they would be continuously looking like however they looked with their foot, doing whatever it was doing there, and like
Just getting it up.
Yeah. But that's where
Cleaning
they're
it
going
up.
to stay. Yeah, they've been doing it a long time, and that's their max, and that's going to continue to be their max, because until they fix things and learn how to get under a bar and keep their hips, whatever. Like the amount of people I was going around and correcting, I was like, shoot, let's start this over. Like, here we go. So
Right.
I think people miss out on that, and like you said, there's a wide variety of what you're going to get at CrossFit gyms. If you're going to a gym with less experience coaching and they're just putting you through a workout and calling it a day, like, yeah, it may not be that valuable to attend that class because it's going to be the same thing as going through it by yourself. But if you seek out a highly experienced coach at a good CrossFit gym like yourself or me or many others, you can get a lot out of it, like a ton out of it.
For sure.
No matter what
No,
level
I totally
you're at.
agree.
So,
and I really like what you said about, when to get a coach. There's no time for that. And I think, like I said, my wife gets coaching from China, and, she was kind of asking herself that question. She was like, man, I really want to coach, but like in her eyes, she's like, I'm not a semifinals athlete. I'm not like, she just made quarterfinals for the first time this year. And so it's like, she's like, why do I need to do this? Why do I need to put it forth? But for her, like, having China has been a godsend. Like, she has
Nice.
someone to bounce all of her craziness off of with her training. Not to say that like that, but like just someone to talk to, and somebody that's not me. That's not like, you need to fix this movement. You need to eat right and sleep right if you want to do this. But someone that, like, can relate to her and understand, that's not me or whatever.
Totally.
So I do recognize that now, from living with her and going through that. So I do agree with you on that. That there's no perfect time to have a coach. Sometimes it's just helpful to have someone to talk to about your problems. I'm sure you get the therapist role a lot as a remote
Forever.
coach.
Forever and ever. I
So
think the easiest way to sum it up is anyone who's looking to make a real commitment and they may not have the affiliate class situation that they want for themselves. So if they don't have the
right.
gym or the coach or whatever in person that they want, no matter what fitness level you are, if you want to make a real commitment to yourself, then you need to find a coach who's willing to make that commitment to you as well. And then you have two people working on a common goal. No matter what that goal is, coach will help you get there faster. It just, as human beings, naturally, we have biases. We think we know what's best for ourselves. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And so when you have a second
Yep.
opinion, especially somebody you build a relationship with and can trust, man, do you get to that end result so much faster. It's just undeniable.
Yep. There's also something in putting some money behind what you say is your goal. It's one thing, and that's true for business too. Like, I've had business coaches, where it's like, you say you want to grow a big business, but you're too proud to, like, fork out some money and go hire someone to tell you how to do marketing and advertising and grow your gym and put some systems into place that'll actually help it do what it needs to do. Then that's the result you get. So I totally agree. The third person perspective is very unvalued, in that. But we offer remote coaching, right?
We do.
Through Jumpship.
We do. Both of
So
us do.
how so
Yes.
it so how would people get involved um, with Jumpship, with the program? Would you say they should start trying to get into the 90 first? Should they tell their affiliate owner to ditch the CAP programming and start with the Jumpship class? Or I'm just kidding.
Um, well, what I just say about all human beings have biases, right? I have an extreme
Yeah.
bias here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we offer all kinds of services. So whether you're in need of a one-on-one coach, myself or Monroe can help you quite a bit with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in the fitness world. All the things we talked about, even lifestyle stuff, just giving advice from our own experiences and from our other athletes' experiences we've coached. There's that. If your gym, is feeling a little stagnant with their current programming, I feel like Jump Ship can be a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. I've talked to a ton of coaches who have taken on this program for their gym. One of the biggest things I think is that this program is very coachable. So like it gives you a lot of opportunities to go through movements with the class. It gives the structure of it allows for more opportunity for the coach to go around typically and give feedback. And we're not afraid to program things that are tough. A lot of gym owners I talk to are like, oh, my clientele, there's not many people doing muscle ups. Like no one can do that. No one's walking on their hands. And it's like, okay, how often do you program it? Well, we don't because no one can do it. And I'm like, and no one
That's
ever
why.
will. Yep. And no one ever
Yep.
will. So you need to be willing to put challenges like things up there that people can't do so that they can work towards them. And as a coach, you need to be able and willing to teach the progressions that get them there. That's how you advance fitness. So otherwise, you're just running a boot camp. You can call it CrossFit,
Hmm.
but you're running a boot camp if you're not challenging people with stuff they can't do. So that's stuff we offer. You can always talk through the program with myself. Monroe, I'm sure, could give you a ton of feedback on the class program. He runs it. You can always reach out to
Yeah.
either of us, social media or email or whatever, and
Yep.
have a conversation. But yeah, we
Cool.
offer something for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, the class program's great. And especially, I was definitely a little, not nervous, but I guess I wanted to see how the regular clientele would take the lifting after conditioning,
Yep.
and I've had nothing but positive from the people in my gym, and like
Yeah.
things that I didn't expect. Like obviously we talked about like, oh man, I feel really warm. I feel like really snappy. I know like these positions are really like drilled in now from doing it in the Metcon. But one dude was like, he was like, man, I love that now when we do the Metcon first, when I leave after doing the strength piece, I'm not like dying walking into my car, like trying to catch my breath leaving the gym. I leave the gym and I'm cooling and I can grab the fit aids and say bye to everyone on the way out, you know? So I was like, yeah,
That's a
that's
great
an
point.
interesting thing I never thought about.
I didn't
But
think
yeah, we
about that
love it.
either. Yeah. Obviously we just took over a well-established CrossFit gym out here in Phoenix, and we just
Mhm.
rebranded it to, Jump Ship Phoenix, and that gym has like 250 members. And so not only do they have new ownership, but now they have new programming. You know how much people latch onto their programming, especially a gym of 10 years, right? They've always done it a
Right.
certain way. This was not the same way. And at first, skepticism, and I just kept at it, keep trying, keep trying. I was
Good.
there a lot trying to give good
Good.
feedback. And now, I mean, people are like, I can't believe I ever lifted before this. I feel so warm up, so warmed up. I feel fresh. Like, wow. Like, and obviously with the nature of this style of program, the other benefit is it gives so many opportunities for athletes to PR. You hear about like
Mhm.
every day, there's a day goes by that someone hasn't hit a PR on one of their lifts, even if you're
Yeah.
not asking them to max out, but it's a new 5 rep, a new 3 rep. They're just building
Mhm.
across the clock, and someone has a good day and someone's PRing. So those opportunities are always there for athletes, as opposed to the gyms that try to put them on a 8-12 week lifting cycle, and then
Yep.
only 40% of your
Half of them
gym
fall
shows
out.
up for test day. Yeah, half of them can't make the.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just more opportunity for more people.
If you want to, you can reach out to either of us on social media. You can check out Jump Ship on online at jumpshiptraining.com, and we'll see you soon.